right, so Iain Bryson is the father of a child that was internationally trafficked into a intergenerational satanic family. He has been fighting for over 14 years to expose the evil practices of his first wife's family. She having revealed to him that her family is a cult and that she would be taking their daughter back there because of mind control. Iain didn't know what she was even talking about, but then it happened 2 days after Christmas in 2010. After failing to convince the authorities to intervene on behalf of his daughter for 4 months post-abduction, Iain attempted to force an evaluation of his daughter, leading to him being incarcerated in Poland for 50 months. Iain published a documentary-style, evidence-based memoir in 2024, and he continues to fight for his daughter and others in similar situations. The gates of hell shall not prevail. With that, Iain, let's give him a warm welcome. They want you to use that one? Okay. Let's give it a try, see what happens. Thank you.
All right, so I know how to use this from listening to the first couple speakers. I think I was gonna make a little joke that some people might get, but Nathan's not here, but I'll still make it. I'm wearing basically a plastic shirt because the linen railroad didn't deliver to my house yet. And then I spilled coffee on my laptop on the airplane, so my wife and I stayed up too late last night remaking the slideshow, and but I think it's going to be good. So I want to say thank you again to Kelly and Warrior Bride and everybody here. You guys are my people, and I don't get to spend enough time with people like you. And I'm just very blessed and honored to be here. And I thank you all for coming. We need to meet more often. We're in a war, and that's how we need to not forget that. So I tell my wife that I'm an introvert, and she doesn't believe me. Once upon a time I was, and I was very private. I was into privacy law, and I wanted to stay in my own bubble. And God had another plan for me. And switched again. So I'm not who I once thought I was. But hopefully I'm becoming who he created me to be. And that's who I always wanted to be as a child. I just didn't know what I was doing. When I looked around in the world, I was like, well, what are these Christians doing? And I went away from that for a long time. Any confidence, any boldness I have is only because of who he is, who our Lord and Savior is. I realized a long time ago there's absolutely nothing I can do. Our enemy is not a weakling. Our enemy is strong, but our enemy cannot stand to the power that we have through the authority that's been given to us by Jesus Christ. I don't know if anyone else has gone to the bathroom 7 times in the last 90 minutes, but that goes back to me believing I was an introvert. So in the multitude of my anxieties within me, your comforts delight my soul. That's one of my favorite Psalms, 94:19, I believed. So that the picture up there is me with my first wife and our daughter. And then my ex-father-in-law, who is my daughter's abductor and primary perpetrator abuser. I found that picture of him on YouTube. And I believe he's in that picture. Yeah, he is. So my message is also about why you are here, why we are here, what we're doing in this life. And I want you to think about why you are here. That's already been delivered this morning, but I'm going to just continue in that vein. I think that is crucial. What are we doing here? What is God's purpose for us in this short time that we have on earth? And how can we do that? How can we glorify Him with every breath that we take? That's my desire. It wasn't always my desire. After I've seen what I have seen, it is my only desire. As Kelly said, the gates of hell shall not prevail. The people of God must stand. You must stand. My first wife and daughter are mind control slaves. They're programmed multiples. They have no way out on their own. I believe they're waiting. And we'll get into that more. But my book, I wrote towards my daughter. Like the text is to you, and you is my daughter. But my first wife is also included in that. She's just an older version of my daughter. And it's also about all survivors, all people who are caught in this atrocity that has to end. There's nothing else that should be on our agenda other than serving the one who can and will cut the wicked down. Another psalm that Kelly has been posting lately, 121. I will lift my eyes up to the hills, from whence comes my help. My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. And then there's two places in the Psalms where it says, give us help from trouble, for the help of man is useless. I know that all too well. As Kelly said, I've been fighting for more than 14 years. There's nothing in this world. It's nobody's job to protect my daughter. And I did the whole runaround with that, looking everywhere and everywhere. There is nothing. It's only God. In the morning of December 27th, 2010, that was the last day I saw my daughter. My first wife told me, I want you to spend this time with her. And she stayed in bed with a migraine, repeating to me what she had been repeating to me, that she was going to take our daughter back to Poland. I asked her to get out of bed. I told her I wanted to go out with our whole family. She said, no, I want you to spend this time together. I had no idea what that day would bring. My daughter and I went out in the snow and played, went to a couple local parks, went to a farm down the street. She didn't want to go home. She hadn't wanted to leave my side for the entire last 3 weeks that we were together. She was afraid. She told me that she helps her mother when she's sick. And I had no idea what I was dealing with at the time. Eventually, her mother was texting and calling me repeatedly, saying she had plans and we had to return home. I could feel her urgency. I tried to hold off as long as I could, but I didn't take my daughter seriously enough. My first wife convinced me she was cooking dinner. I told my daughter, Mommy loves you. We need to go back home, and we did. And my first wife was waiting at the top of the stairs, dressed and ready to go for the first time in 3 weeks. And fear crept in. I had no idea what was happening, but I knew something was up. And she said, I want to take her to the store. And I said, no, you've been threatening me that you're taking her back to Poland. You have her passport. We need to not go to the store right now. Eventually she got me, and I caved, watched her, gave my daughter a hug, had to pry her hands from around my neck. I looked into her big blue eyes and told her I loved her, and I never saw her again. I never heard her voice again. Never got to hear her say daddy again. Never got to do the the one thing that I realized was the most important duty in my life, which is my daughter and raising my daughter, that was just gone. There was never a day when my daughter was safe since then. My first wife told me her family's a cult. She told me she was taking our daughter back to them because of mind control. She told me she had something like Stockholm Syndrome. And she told me that her dad created a red herring so that no one would believe me and no one would help me. And I told her she was crazy. I told her we needed to get help. I had no idea what she could possibly be talking about until after my daughter walked down those stairs and I never saw her again. And then the barriers fell and I did see what was happening. But at that point, it was too late. I lost everything I cared about and everything I was supposed to protect. I was just taken apart and destroyed, and I was just entirely powerless. So counting the cost, what are they? What are these children worth? What is my daughter worth? The scripture, Hebrews 13:3, remember the prisoners as if chained with them, those who are mistreated, since you yourselves are in the body also. For me, it's easy because my daughter's one of the prisoners. There's not a moment where I'm not remembering that. I would go to the ends of the earth for my daughter. I would plunder nations. And this may sound extreme. If I could push a button and end the world and save my daughter, I would do it. And that's just me as a father. It doesn't make sense to everybody, but I would do anything. But what I've found is that I can't do any of that. What can I do is surrender myself and my will to the one who can. That's the absolute only thing I can do. Months before my daughter was abducted, her abductor, which was her grandfather, who didn't speak English, told me in broken English, "I'm sorry you're so weak." I had no idea what he meant. I told my first wife, and she said he shouldn't have said that. But he did say that, and it stuck. He was trying to communicate something to me. I had no idea what was coming down the line, but he knew what his plan was. He knew the power and the spiritual wickedness that he would wield against me. At the time, I was just a humanist atheist, searching for answers, knowing in a sense that love is the answer, but of course, without knowing who God is, you don't know who love is. I thought I was pretty smart. I thought I could handle anything in the world, especially when my wife was healthy and by my side. I thought faith was idiocy. I thought prayer was talking to yourself or an imaginary friend, and I mocked God. I didn't see that I had any need for him whatsoever. Why would I need God? Why would I need God for my family? Though I thought about those things because I didn't. He was knocking on the door. I was researching, looking for answers, but that was just not an answer. I wasn't willing to consider that could be the answer. I grew up. I grew up Christian on Sundays, basically. Christian when I told my friends what my religion was, because that's what my mom told me to say. Christian when we needed something or wanted relief from sickness or pain. I did know that there was a God. I would say probably briefly. I was baptized. I felt the Holy Spirit. That's what I wanted at that time. I wanted more of that. But when I returned home to the people I was around and to the church, that's not what they were doing. I was thrust back into the world and just became more of their mindset. And that was just a blip in my life where in my early years, around 8th grade, I felt the Holy Spirit and I wanted it, but without anyone else seeking that, I didn't know where to go. My mother gave me many Bibles as I was growing up, and I did memorize scripture. I listened to, I don't know if anyone knows Phil Driscoll, but he wrote a song called Warriors. And he says, put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to stand against the very forces of darkness. People, be strong, be courageous, have no fear, do not compromise. For the weapons of your warfare are mighty. Be strong unto God. You are a warrior. That's what I wanted. I didn't see that. I didn't see that in anybody in our church community. But I still listen to that song and it still pumps me up. That's what I wanted. That's how the gates of hell are not going to prevail. Nobody else around me seemed to see that or want to be a warrior. I didn't know any other wannabe warriors as a child, at all. Where was this darkness, and how come nobody was talking about it? My mother once yelled "occult" through clenched teeth when I was listening to music she didn't like, but she didn't follow through. It just came out. And it shocked me because this isn't something my mother had ever said or said since after that. So it's stuck in my memory as some sort of trauma memory. But I was just like, what could she possibly mean? Occult? What is that? It wasn't until many years later that I knew. I wish she had told me more about this. Surely this music that I was listening to couldn't be the darkness. I knew that. Maybe it's not the best music, but there's got to be some real enemy, and I had no idea who that could be because no one was talking about it. For the Christians that I grew up with, being forgiven and saved, believing they're going to heaven once they're done with whatever this is, end of story, cross that off your list. Now what are you going to do this weekend? In my teen years, there was no fire in the church. I was at a different church, just going through the motions, learning the right answers, as I see now in churches that I've attended. We're blended with the world. Again, aren't we supposed to be warriors? So I went the other way because I didn't need a special friend group or I didn't need to know where I'm going when I die. I just said, I don't need that. I don't know what those people are even doing. I turned my back on God. I searched the world, searched philosophy, drugs and alcohol. Like a child who wants their parent to show them that they love them. That's where I was at with God. Just turn my back on him. If you're there, you're going to show me you're there. Otherwise, I don't want anything to do with you. I prayed sometimes right before a test or when I found myself in a pickle, but not because I believed anything. I just figured, why not? It can't hurt. I wasn't desperate enough to know that I really needed God until I was confronted with the epitome of evil right in front of my face, within my own home, with my own child, and I lost. I was stopped dead in my tracks and redirected. The devil came into my house and took the most valuable thing in my world, and there was nothing I could do about it, except turn to God. Having my daughter stolen from me by an intergenerational cult was surely the last thing that I wanted if I knew that generational cults existed, which I didn't. But that's what happened. I wouldn't have turned to God. I wouldn't have put on my armor. I wouldn't have decided to be a soldier for the Lord if my daughter hadn't been stolen by an intergenerational cult. I wouldn't have believed in God at all. And because of that, I'm grateful. More than 5, it's probably 7 or 8 years ago, I got on my knees and I thanked God for everything, including what I'm going through, what my family's going through. Thank you, Lord, because I know you have a plan. I know you're the answer, and I never would have known that answer had I not experienced this. And I know that you can turn this around in a way I can't understand. I know that you can make bad situations into good situations, and I have to trust you with that. So I decided I'm going to stop praying for my daughter to be returned and start praying for more of God, for God to show me his will in my life, for God to give me his strength, for God to give me his mind, for him to use me as a vessel, and for him to show me what that means. And no, not because I'm forgetting about my daughter, but because I know God knows what I want. I know God knows how much I love my daughter. Now I need to put that on the shelf and focus on God. That's what he wants. He wants me to put him first, not my daughter. So Philippians 3:8. Yet indeed I also count it all things loss for the excellence of the knowledge of Christ Jesus my Lord, for whom I have suffered the loss of all things and count them as rubbish, that I may gain Christ. Now, it's hard to say my daughter's rubbish. I don't know that I would use that language, but compared to the answer that answers everything, the answer that brings my daughter back to me in whatever way that God has in store, all of that is rubbish. Everything nothing compares to who our God is and what he has in store for us and who he says we are. And I wouldn't be in this war if it didn't hit me so personally. There's no way that I would have met another survivor like my wife did and say, all right, let's do this. There's nothing else to do. I wouldn't have done that. So, all right, God's the answer. So what does that mean? I knew that I had to desire God above all else. I knew what the scripture said, and I believed it to be true. It's just like, what does this mean? Like, in whatever things you ask in prayer, believing you will receive. I tell you the truth, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. So like, okay, God, that's what I want. How do I pray believing? How do I have faith even as small as a mustard seed? And it's not just because I say I do. It's because I decide that's what I want, and I move that down that road, and God shows me. He opens my eyes. He gives me the strength that I need. I can't do any of this without him, and neither can any of us. I have a mountain that needs to be moved, and there's only one that can move it, and I know that. So it was in an instant, really. I had my blinders up, and I didn't see what was right in front of my face until my daughter walked down those stairs, and then about 10 minutes later, I saw it and began to see it. And it wasn't just because I saw it, just because I saw the devil, and I around the same time I knew the God of the Bible to be who I needed, and the God that the scriptures that I memorized in childhood, that's what I needed. I knew that, but it wasn't as easy as saying, all right, Lord, here I am, because I was so far away from him. I couldn't even use the word Jesus because it's so distorted and twisted in this world. I didn't want to say Jesus and mean it how other people mean when they say Jesus. So I had to figure out even the language that I was using, what I was talking about, because not everyone knows what we're talking about when we use these words. It comes out differently. Pray believing, and it shall be done. I don't think that most people know what that means. So back to as a child with my lack of faith, pretty much, but also that my experience with the Holy Spirit, I was so pumped, and I couldn't understand why nobody else was. Why isn't an option when people ask you what you want to be a great man of God? Like that's nobody. No, that's just in the Bible. That's not for us. That's what people think. They think, well, now we're in this world. They become like entranced in what's going on here, rather than seeing what God's plan is and what He says in His Word. So that the church, I knew it to be dead and basically pointless. They're claiming to believe without actually believing. A lot of phonies and frauds out there. And I was determined to get to the bottom of it. I went to the University of Connecticut and I graduated in 2003. And I just kind of was just sitting in my apartment wondering what to do. And my friend called me and said, there's Polish people that are living down here. Come down and meet them. The moment that I laid my eyes on my first wife, I was hers. I knew that I was going to marry her. I knew that she was going to be my wife. I don't think it was love at first sight, like a fairy tale. I think it was her claiming me because she was very much more powerful than I was, and she was living in the spirit realm as a survivor, as somebody who had seen things that I hadn't even contemplated yet. So she took a plastic ring off her finger and gave it back to me and said, ask me to marry you. And I did. This was a couple weeks after we met. Immediately I knew something was off. I kept a journal, and in my journal, I wrote trauma disorder. What kind? Is it from incest? Is it borderline personality disorder? And I started listing her symptoms even in the first month that we knew each other. But of course, like I was already hers, and I was committed, and I also didn't know about childhood trauma that would follow you into adulthood. So I thought, all right, we'll deal with it, whatever it is. We'll figure it out. And I just went that way. When we were in Poland, I knew something was wrong with her family. Her father, my first wife's father, just severe alcoholic. And he would say things, have it translated through my wife, like, I like young boobies, stuff like that. And it just like blew my mind. Like, what the heck is this guy doing? What is he talking about? But I chalked it up to the Polish. They're Polish. They're different. And that it was easy for me to cross it off the list just by doing that. My first wife's grandfather asked me how my first wife was in bed. They're Polish. What? It's just a weird joke. That's what I chalked it up to. My first wife had no memory of her childhood. She told me flat out, I don't have a relationship with my dad. I don't know why. The nicest thing he ever did for me was bring me one cup of tea. And I had hours of discussions with her about that. Like, why are you lying to me? The nicest thing your dad ever did could not have been to bring you one cup of tea. It's impossible. But she stuck to it. And I believe that's what she thought. That's what she remembered. So she probably had to believe that in order to survive. It was a very, very strange family. And I was happy to move back to the United States. We got married in the United States. Those are my first wife's grandmother, her mother. My first wife is in the brown jacket, and then her cousin. When I was over there, these women, I believe they want out of this situation. I believe that they are doing a sort of integrating, becoming of one mind, and they're so scattered, but they are fighting. And I know from my first wife that she desperately wants out, and she has no way out on her own. Maybe that's why she married me. I don't know. She might have seen that I won't give up, but someday maybe she'll tell me. But these women up here, I was there for Christmas, and they gave me a used Gwen Stefani CD, The Sweet Escape. And like, I didn't listen to Gwen Stefani. I didn't even really know who she was. It was an open CD. I'm like, what kind of weird gift is this? And then, later I was like, oh, The Sweet Escape. I think they want out. I know my first wife does. My first wife showed me where the CIA base was in her city. And that was weird at the time. After the fact, makes sense. So we went from Poland to Connecticut. We were married. I couldn't convince her to start counseling, even though I was still documenting and witnessing trauma signs, traumatic related behaviors. I couldn't convince her to get counseling. There were cycles where everything was great, and then everything would just fall off. And when that happened, I was flattened. I could hardly function, and I just waited until we went back on the up cycle. It was literally driving me crazy, and I calmed myself with doctor prescribed opiates and benzos, and I didn't think I could live without them. My panic. I was diagnosed with panic disorder. It was out of control, and I believe it was just the spiritual forces that were in my home, and especially when I was in Poland in her parents' home, I could hardly function. I had to get a bottle of Jack Daniels or something just to be able to be in the house. And of course, I was a non-believer. So we had our daughter in. She was born in New London, Connecticut. After we were married in 2005, our daughter was born in 2007. And then 2008, my wife wanted to be closer to her family, and she convinced me to do that. She convinced me because it was 2008, so the euro was double the dollar. I like traveling. We moved to the Netherlands where they speak English, and I was all for it. So we moved. We're closer to her family. Then her father starts visiting, and all the time he's visiting. I'm like, well, doesn't he need to work? He wasn't working. We're buying him alcohol when he comes over. It's weird. My daughter started having panic attacks when I would pop a can of beer or something, and her mom would say, "Don't worry, that's daddy. That's not grandpa." It's like, what the heck could be happening? What is going on? My daughter went to daycare because both my wife and I worked, and in the book I found Adele, my daughter's name, was glad that daddy picked you up today and not grandpa. Just like things like that were happening. I'm like, what is going on with grandpa? He's supposed to be here to help. And I don't even know why we need help, but he's determined to be here as much as possible. My panic got to levels where I would start to get on the tram and I would just sprint home as fast as I could. Or someone would knock on the door and I would get out, I would start crawling around on the floor. It was just got the situation in my home when my wife wasn't well was taking me out. I believe my wife could have made me kill myself. She could have done anything, but what she did is make me stronger. And she gave me an ultimatum early in 2010 that I needed to quit the pharmaceuticals that I was taking. And so I listened to her ultimatum as I usually did, and stopped taking clonazepam and morphine on my own. Went through seizures, insomnia, didn't care. I was so terrified by what my wife was telling me and what my daughter was manifesting when she came back from Poland, that I just either I'm going to die or I'm going to get stronger and figure it out. And I did get rid of those things. When I did, I thought, not many people can do that. I'm pretty strong. Let's go. And I didn't see what was around the corner. So Easter 2010, we all went over there to Poland, and then my daughter stayed in Poland. And the reason she stayed in Poland is because my first wife said, my parents say she might die. She has to stay here. And I said, well, if she might die, as her father, I want her back in the Netherlands, or I want to take her to the United States. What the heck do your parents have to do with any of this? But she just said, they say she has to stay there. She might die. Then she came back to my house, and she was a wreck, just a total wreck. Multiple signs of child abuse. I couldn't see it, even though it was right in front of my face. I couldn't even comprehend that somebody could be yelling at my daughter or spanking my daughter, let alone abusing her. And certainly not with my first wife involved. Like I trusted her because I thought I had to. And it just wasn't on my radar as a possibility. These are pictures of my daughter in Poland. The bottom right is my daughter's grandfather. The bottom left is my daughter's great-grandparents, and then my wife standing up and her sister sitting down. And just these times where we visited Poland were extremely strange for me. I could never figure out what it was, and I just leaned into, all right, we'll be out of here soon. And when my wife was healthy, things were excellent. So after Easter 2010, we went back to our home in the Netherlands, and things cleared up. The symptoms my daughter had went away. My wife switched from "I hate you" to "I love you." Oh, and when we're in Poland, she would say, "I'm not with you when we're in Poland. I'm my dad's when we're here." But now we're back in the Netherlands. She's saying, "Oh, I love you. That will never happen again." And I had no idea what that was. And so, healthy woman in front of me, doing great. Why would she revert back to that? How could she? Of course, I just didn't know what I was dealing with. I had no idea about SRA or DID. The closest that I could get to was borderline personality disorder. And I just didn't even know this sort of thing existed, except maybe like on a theoretical sense, everything exists, but I couldn't see the signs and connect the dots. So when my daughter was in Poland during this Easter, I'm going back a little bit, during this Easter trip, I would try to talk to my daughter, and I wasn't allowed to. They would say she's too tired. Sometimes my father-in-law would walk behind the camera. And again, I wasn't a believer at the time, but I had chills going through me. And I thought it felt like the devil walking through the room, but I didn't believe in the devil, but I knew something was going on. So we're great after Easter 2010, dancing as a family, cooking, reading, planning our future. We decided that we were going to move back to the United States and get our family back over there. So we applied for my wife's visa because she couldn't go to the U.S. without it. And I decided I'm going to go to the U.S., find us a place to live, find work. I'll come back and get you guys. I said, you guys go to Poland for support while I'm gone. And I had no recollection of what happened the last time they went to Poland. Of course, if I did, it would have blown my mind. But that block was up. So I'm back in the United States. This is more pictures from Poland. I'm back in the United States, communicating with my first wife every day. Everything seemed amazing. We're moving. She's in love. She's the happiest woman I've ever known. I stayed at my mom's, and I worked and looked at houses and sent my daughter multiple packages to Poland per week. I didn't know not to celebrate Halloween, so I did that year, and I dressed up as a prisoner with my brother to go to a party, not knowing that I would be a prisoner in 6 months' time. I was sitting at a coffee shop one day, and this woman came down and said, "Can I sit across from you?" I said, "Yeah, go ahead." And she looked at me, and she said, "You have a wife and a daughter, right?" I'd never seen this woman before. I don't know if it was a woman or an angel, to tell you the truth. But I said, "Yes, I have a wife and a daughter." And I met her eyes, and I almost started crying just by meeting her eyes. And she just said, "All I can say is that it hurts." She got up and walked out the door. And I had no idea. Yes, I have a wife and a daughter. What are you talking about? Like, I am on top of it. I'm protecting them. But this woman just sat down and told me that, and then walked out the door. Later, it blew my mind once I'm like, where did that come from? How did she know? I was, when I was in the U.S. and my wife and daughter were in Poland, I was desperate for answers. I was visiting every local library. My car was full of books. I was researching belief systems, conditioning, the inevitability of incest if left to our own devices, which was in D.H. Lawrence's Psychoanalysis in the Unconscious. I was just like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Without any moral compass, without any laws or decisions about how we're going to be, that is the way it would go. Same as what's that book by Golding, Lord of the Flies, where they're, everything breaks down, and it's the same in us in society. Without God, it eventually leads all in that direction to total depravity. So that was my family before I went to the U.S. and sent them to Poland. Again, like I literally thought we were the happiest family in the world. I thought I was going to write a book about how to have a happy family, how to communicate with your wife. We went on a trip right before I left. It was the last trip I ever got to take with my family, and we stayed at the Hotel Mayflower, which I thought was kind of interesting. So my relatives went to the U.S. on the Mayflower, my ancestors. But here we go. 3 months apart, from September to December, I was in the U.S. Every single day, I have documented communication from my first wife, proclaiming her undying love for me, proclaiming her love for our family, and her desire for us to be back together. November 10th, I love you so much, my wonderful hubby. You are so amazing and special to me. And thanks to you, I'm the luckiest and happiest girl in the world. November 11th, baby, I love you more than words can express. I miss you very much daily. But the thought of us together soon gets me through each day. You are the world to me, and I simply love our family in every second of every day because we have each other. I'm so proud of you and all your hard work. I'm extremely excited about our adventure and finding a place on earth me and Adele and Allie can call home and to always have a place to come back to. I love you. I miss you. I love you some more. Like one. You are my everything. Love your wifey. So that like one comes from my first wife. I would say I love you, and she would say I love you like one. I had never heard anything like that before. That's why I named my book I Love You Like One. I haven't had a chance to ask her, but I think it has something to do with Romans 12:5. So we being many are one body in Christ and individually members one of another. This woman knows that I love my daughter. She loves her daughter. There's nothing she could do other than give me as much as she could, as much as she was able to do. November 16th, the same thing. Love you way more. Love you so freaking much. December 6th. So this is 3 days before we met back up in our house in the Netherlands. December 8th is the day before, and she's still proclaiming her love for me. Never once during those 3 months did she not proclaim her love for me. I could see, we did Skype calls at the time. I could see her falling apart, but I just thought I'll be back with her soon. She's strong. I know she's strong. The woman I left was strong and steadfast, and how could that possibly change? So I flew from Boston to Amsterdam on December 8th. I was the happiest man in the world still, going home to my girls, finally, after way too long apart. My bags were full of presents for my daughter and books that I couldn't leave in the U.S., didn't want to leave in the U.S. The book that I chose to give my wife was Steinbeck's The Winter of Our Discontent. Just randomly picked it out of my bag and gave it to her. I had no idea that this was going to be the winter of our discontent. I I ran all the way home from the airport. Just couldn't wait to see them. When I did see them, I immediately saw a darkness hovering over them. And the fear started to creep in, like, what happened? Could this be happening again? I went upstairs, tried to give her a kiss. She jumped away and said, "I hate you. I've always hated you." And that's when she said, "My family's a cult and I'm taking our family back to the cult." I just said, that doesn't make sense. You're crazy. What are you talking about? Let's go get help. Please, let's go get help. These are selfies that my daughter took of herself, and my daughter was a wreck when she came back. She had a bruise, so we're getting my daughter ready for bed, and my wife says, "Tell Daddy where you got the bruise," and she says, "Grandpa," in Polish, and I just look at the two of them, and I'm like, what is going on? And even though my wife had my daughter tell me that Grandpa gave her a bruise, it couldn't click. Like, how could this be happening? Why doesn't my wife have a separate conversation with me? Why would she tell me that way? So this blind spot that I had, just stayed right until the last minute. She was talking about her grandfather's private parts. She was having nightmares. She came into our room at night and said, "Monster." And I got up and I said, "There's no monster." My wife said, "Yes, there is." She was afraid to leave my side. She was going to the bathroom in her pants and in her bed again. Like, every sign of child abuse, people give me a hard time about not seeing it. I didn't see it. I trusted my wife. I couldn't comprehend that this could be happening in my home to my daughter with my wife involved. It was impossible. It's just crossed off my mental list of possibilities. I sat on the ground with my daughter, held her hands, looked into her eyes, and asked her to tell me what was going on. She froze up. I could tell she was afraid. She was a month from 4 years old, and I didn't want to push her. I thought I had time. I thought this cycle will spin again, and my wife will be back to the woman that loves me any minute. And I just have to wait. At least they're in my home now. This is pictures of my first wife. I took these pictures when she was in bed, and I said, look at this. You look like a rape victim. Can we please go get help? I was desperately trying to get her to get help. I went to a psychologist that knew her. I was trying to get him to get her to get help. I went to the police eventually and told them she has our daughter's passport, and she's saying she's taken our daughter back to Poland. The police wouldn't help me. I was alone in a foreign country dealing with just a crazy, impossible situation. Without God, it's totally impossible. And I just couldn't figure it out. I began looking for marks on her body. Is this even my wife? Is this the same person? Like, how could this be the same person? Because literally, like, I love you December 8th. I hate you December 9th. And everything else changed too. Everything about her was different. And I didn't know if it was my wife for a while. I thought it was, but I couldn't be sure because everything that was coming out of her was completely different. My daughter started dumping potted plants all over the furniture, spilling milk multiple times per meal. I just cleaned it up. I was just like just trying to keep my doors, what was inside my house, safe, protect it, and I have time. That's what I thought again. So there's only one thing that my first wife asked me to do during the last 3 weeks we were together after those 3 months apart. And that was download Drake's, I don't like Drake, but this is what she asked me to download, Drake's album, Thank Me Later. And then she proceeded to listen to the song Shut It Down and Miss Me hundreds of times over those 3 weeks. I was like, shut it down. What are you talking about? What are you trying to say to me? And then this Miss Me song, like, we were just apart for 3 months. I miss you terribly. Don't you miss me? She'd be like, no, I'm taking our daughter back to Poland because of mind control. I'd just be like, what the heck are you talking about? I miss you so much. Why don't you just come back to me? Why don't we just go get help? But there was no stopping this from happening. She was a complete wreck. So she wanted, like, when we put our daughter to bed, that was the only time I got to spend with her. She wanted to watch the movie Unthinkable, which is a horrible movie about a terrorist, and it just goes through this whole thing about trying to get the terrorists to tell you where the bombs are, and at the end they threaten his kids, and it works. And I'm like, why didn't they do that at the beginning? Like, why do they play all these games? You just threaten his kids, and he'll do what you want. And she looked at me like, yeah, you get it. I didn't know at the time. The other movie she wanted to watch was Remember Me, which is a 9/11 movie where this couple has a turmoil in their relationship. They're figuring things out. Right as they start to figure things out, he goes up in the Twin Tower because his dad works there, and boom. And I was just like, wow, that was another horrible movie. Like, so I was sitting at my computer researching my first wife, and I found, I don't know if you know who Henry Rollins is, but he sings a song called Liar. And so I pulled up this music video. I called her in and said, this is what I see when I look at you. Can we please get help? She just gave me another funny look and walked away. But that is actually what I saw when I looked at her. I wouldn't have been surprised if her head spun around. I had uncontrollable diarrhea and sweating in my bed, in my house, just walking around. My cat was pooping on my wife's pillow. Like, the spiritual stuff that was happening in my home was just, it was blowing my mind. And I was trying to hold myself together. I was, I was also, I had seen this many times, so I was stronger than I'd ever been. And I was like, you're not going to fool me this time. We're going to get help. I'm going to write a book about this. And I told her, I'll use someone else. I'll change your name. And she said, no, write the book. Don't change my name. So that's what I did. She told me God doesn't approve of our marriage. And I'm just like, I didn't know you believed in God. What? And I said, but of course God approves of our marriage. She just said, no, Iain, he doesn't. And she's just very firm. There's no compromise. No, she's not going to sway from that decision she's made. Of course, I couldn't connect the dots, but cult, mind control, Stockholm syndrome, God for her is whoever's on the other side of the Stockholm syndrome. Programmers are often called God. So one time I was sitting on my couch in my living room. My daughter comes into me, hands me a little Bible. My wife is standing behind her. So I know my wife told her to hand me this Bible. I hadn't seen this Bible in 20 years or something like that. I didn't know it was in the Netherlands. She handed me this Bible, just looked at me, and I'm like, what is going on? Why did she have my daughter hand me the Bible? And then she says, you are just like your father. And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm not like my dad. She said it 2 or 3 more times. Like, all right, she's not referring to my dad, but she's referring to God, I guess. But like, we're not a Christian family. I don't know what she's talking about. And that was weird because, well, first she hands me the Bible, then she tells me that. And I believe what she was telling me was there's one way through the Lord Jesus Christ. There is only one way. She knew it. I didn't know it. For Christmas, I went out to get a tree for my daughter, and I called my wife and said, should I get the big or small one? The expensive or the inexpensive? She said, get the expensive one. But she would not participate in any of this with my daughter and I. She just said, why would I care? I hate you. I'm taking our daughter back to Poland. So 2 days after Christmas, after that day at the farm and at the parks, and we went back home. Again, my wife said, I want you to spend this time with her. Let's see what we got. There's the Bible. I have it here. It pretty much never leaves my side. Um, so we go home. My wife's waiting to go. Eventually, she fooled me again. It felt similar to when I saw her and knew I was going to marry her. I think it's a form of hypnotism. In the book, I call it glamored, because that's what they call it in the show True Blood. Not that it's a good show, but it portrays what my wife is able to do to me and other people, my first wife. So they watched my daughter walk down the stairs. I called my best friend who lives in Arizona. I said, it's happening again, Brian. I don't know what to do. Uh, I, I, he was like, well, what do you mean it's happening again? You mean it's like you ask her, what's your favorite color? And she says refrigerator. I said, yeah, it's something like that. And then it hit me, they're gone. And I just, all at once, it just came back. They are gone. I said, Brian, I got to go. I sprinted to the police department. The police department wouldn't even take a report. I just said, please, just stop them from leaving the Netherlands. Don't let them go to Poland. My daughter is being abused in Poland. They wouldn't take a report. They wouldn't give me the time of day. So I went back home, contacted my parents, contacted the U.S. Embassy. The U.S. Embassy told me that my best option was to reabduct my daughter and get her to the embassy where she would then be evaluated. He said, do not let her go back to Poland. I didn't know where they were, but I knew what my wife told me, that she was going back to Poland. So like I just sat in my apartment listening to this duty officer say, reabduct with your daughter. I'm like, what kind of crazy movie am I in? You know, how am I going to get a 3-year-old away from her mother in broad daylight and to the embassy in a city I don't know? I was just completely perplexed. My first wife left a video, a 3-second clip on the computer. She left some things for me when she took off. This 3-second clip, this is in her parents' house in Poland. She says, my first wife says, did you beat her? And her father says, we did. Of course, a 3-second clip isn't the best evidence, but the authorities have never cared about whatever evidence I have anyways. So this red herring, okay, so these are journals that my wife left on our desk when she left. A lot of it's in Polish, some of it's in English, but she says, I believe in you. She says, I want you to make me feel like I'm the only girl in the world, which is a Rihanna song, but also when people can't communicate with their words because they're not allowed to say certain things, they do whatever they can to communicate with you. And I believe that's what she was doing. She wrote, I love you. But she told me what was going to happen, and it happened. And the red herring was deployed. So if you don't know what a red herring is, it's basically a strong scent that draws a hunting dog off of a trail onto a phony trail and away from the game. So my wife and daughter are leaving the country, going back to Poland. I'm telling everyone they're being abused in Poland. My daughter's being abducted, and the red herring is, hey, look at Iain, look at how crazy and bad he is. Don't look over here at this disappearing child. And it worked. My wife said they're going to use your drug, psychological, criminal histories against you. No one's going to believe you. It's exactly what happened. And I'm just like, the whole time I'm like, you can put me in the electric chair. Like, I'm not trying to defend who I am or where I've been. I'm trying to say there's that. And then there's this over here, my disappearing daughter. I wasn't trying in any way to protect myself. I'm just saying, hey, my daughter's missing. So my dad came over, said he's going to help me. First thing he did was call a psychiatric intervention team into my apartment. I'm just like, look, my daughter's missing. Where is she? I'm trying to figure that out. So they left. But I knew at that point my dad and my mom were biting into this red herring. But I still needed them. I needed to be able to trust them. So they convinced me to go back to the U.S. We would get a lawyer. I flew to Boston. My mom and aunt picked me up, drove to a hospital My mom said, that she needs to go in. I looked at her, red eyes, crying. I'm like, yeah, she does need help. I go in with my mom to support her, and they say, Iain, you're staying. I ended up 2 weeks in one of those psych wards where I had to just go through the motions. They were going to let me go the next day because I knew what I had to do is just stop talking about my daughter. But my family all called and said, we're afraid of what he might do. We're afraid that he might kill himself. And I'm just like, what are you talking about? All I want is to get my daughter from this situation. But I ended up 2 weeks in there. When I was released, I walked in the snow to my mother's house. She gave me $20 in my car keys and told me I had to go somewhere else. So I stayed at a friend's widow's house, just kept writing everybody, kept reaching out to everybody I could think of, President Obama on the list, and praying in the way that I knew how. I was still trying to use my own strength. Like I knew the answer, but like this is happening. This is a month, 2 months, 3 months after my daughter's abduction. I'm fighting in the world at this point, still trying to pull strings. After 4 months of getting nowhere, other than a Cambodian human trafficking agency did believe me, and he did end up sending people to Poland, but all he could do is have the local police knock on the door. The local police, in general, don't know anything about this sort of thing. And in Poland, my father-in-law is a bigwig in the city. He works for the city. He's friends with the president, friends with a judge in the court that I was eventually tried in. I didn't have a chance. There's the Polish FBI has told me they don't believe in ritual abuse. I didn't have a chance. So I decided, like, what does a dad do? What do I do when I know what's going on? The whole world isn't listening to me. I just had to do something. I didn't know what I was going to do until the last minute. Or I never knew. It just kind of happened. But I flew from Boston to Amsterdam, rented a car, and I drove to Poland. My first plan was to reabduct my daughter, according to what the duty officer told me. But as I'm driving through Germany, it's like, how am I going to get my 4-year-old now from whoever's taking care of her into a car in an hour across an international border? I thought that was crazier than what I ended up doing. Of course, up to the last minute, I didn't know if I was going to kill the guy, my father-in-law. I still was like in this world where I was all by myself. I knew that Jesus Christ is the answer, but I was still fighting under my own power. So morally, ethically, if someone comes into my house and threatens my child, I'll shoot him. What's the difference if it's 4 months later? So I didn't know. I didn't eliminate it as a possibility. I bought a hammer on the way to Poland. And then I knew that my father-in-law would come out to throw away his beer cans because he's predictable like that as an alcoholic. So I waited. He came out. I smashed my rental car into a wall to block his egress. And then I just instinctively grabbed the hammer from behind me and chased him down the street. As I'm chasing him, it was almost like an out-of-body experience. Like, what am I doing? This is crazy. And I switched the hammer from my right hand to my left hand and punched him with my right hand, knowing that's when I knew that I wasn't going to do what I considered doing. But I didn't know until that moment, because I wasn't really against it per se. It just didn't happen. It was almost like I was being held back by angels. I had like a peace about it. Like, no, that's not what you're doing. I wasn't angry. I was just trying to be pragmatic and get somebody to listen to me, because I believed that would lead to a child abuse investigation. Of course it didn't. I was arrested, spent 2 nights in jail. Then I went before a judge in the same courthouse where my father-in-law's best friend is a judge. I asked for a change of venue. They wouldn't give me a change of venue. I tried to talk about why I did what I did. He didn't. The judge did not care at all why I did what I did. I'm like, that's the whole reason I'm here. I'm not mad at the guy. All I wanted was this podium to talk to you. And he's like, well, we're going to charge you with attempted murder because you had a hammer, even though you didn't hit him with it. That's what you wanted to do. So I was put in Polish prison at that point. My family, I had no contact with my family. And I sat in pretrial prison for 19 months. Just thinking that they're going to still do a child abuse investigation. They're going to come open the door and let me out any minute. Of course, that didn't happen. What they did is the prosecutor collected evidence without doing a child abuse investigation. So his investigation was to talk to people like my first wife and her father and say, are you being abused? No. And then close the case on that. So then they had me evaluated by a court psychiatrist after they had closed the case on child abuse without doing an investigation. And the court psychiatrist said, his first question was, so do you pray? And who do you pray to? Because at that point I was writing about my hope in God. And I didn't really care what anyone thought about me. But these court psychiatrists, who do you pray to? Oh, and do you hear voices? And do you think your daughter's being abused? When I said yes, I think my daughter's being abused. Of course, the prosecutor has no evidence. They said, oh, we think you're delusional. But they sent me for a 2-month eval. I was in the cell with people who found cigarette butts on the ground, chewed them up like Nicorette, and then dried them out and smoked them. It's a pretty crazy place. The court psychiatrist there said, if what you're saying is happening, I think it's going to continue to happen. He said, I've never heard of a woman who wouldn't be able to get help on her own. He said, wouldn't it be nice if you were crazy and your daughter isn't being abused? And then he said that the prosecutor says there's no abuse. So there's no evidence that what you're saying is true. And it's not his job to evaluate me in any other light other than through what the prosecutor's asking him to do. I tried to reason. I said, can't you see there's no evidence because they haven't looked? They don't even know what I'm talking about. And he said, yeah, but the prosecutor says he investigated and that's all I have to go on. So I was not, it wasn't a good situation. But ultimately it's better because attempted murder is 8 to 25 years. Not guilty because insane is they have to let you out once you clear up. So all I had to do was stop talking about my daughter. They wouldn't let me call witnesses. They wouldn't let me have a second psychiatric opinion. I wrote at least a letter every day to somebody asking for help. They used that as more evidence that I was crazy. And I tried to, what do you expect a dad to do? Not write letters, or, but basically this thing, there's no abuse because Iain is crazy and Iain is crazy because there's no abuse. It's just this big circle of nonsense. When in actuality, I'm this little girl's father. You should probably listen to me if I say that in my home where the three of us were, these things were happening, but they only listened to the other side. In court, I tried to get my wife to crack because I knew she was just operating on a script. And then I got banned from court for doing that because the court wanted me to only fight for myself. But again, I wasn't fighting for myself. I was only trying to use the venue to get somebody to look at my daughter. I begged the embassy to help. The U.S. Embassy would not help me. They visited every 6 months because they had to and gave me used pencils and candy. They told me that my daughter's not a U.S. citizen when she's in Poland because her mother's Polish. That blew my mind. I thought I could count on the U.S. government, but I learned the hard way that I can't. So from 19 months of pretrial prison, they sent me to one of Poland's maximum security psychiatric prison hospitals. I walk in the door, and there's a guy pretending to be a John Deere tractor. Like that right away. There's people with their hands tied up all day because they might punch somebody. And I start hanging out with this one guy, and they're like, oh, you shouldn't hang out with him. He might kick you. And I'm like, no, he's not going to kick me. Like he didn't because I got along with all of them. But this is the place I was in. They started trying to force medicate me. even though the director said it's a mistake you're here, but the court wants you to be treated here, so that's what I have to do. He said, I don't know why they didn't just evaluate your daughter, but it's not my job to reassess, so I'm going to treat you. So I knew that nobody was going to help me, that I had to stop talking about my daughter completely, that I had to learn how to not take their forced medication, because it felt like pouring rubber cement in my head when I did. There were people that did step in and show me, like, just that human connection, that they could see beyond the paperwork. There was a guard who came up to me. He bought me, put food on my cart so I could get some food, put money on my cart so I could get food. And he came up to me and knew I was a Christian. And he just said, God talks to you, doesn't he? And I looked at him like, are you going to get me in trouble? Like, don't tell the psychiatrist. There was a therapist. She was like, I told my husband, I know you're not crazy, but there's nothing I can do. I can teach you Polish. That's all I can do. And I was just like, thank you. Like, thank you for just saying that. Like, I don't expect you to be able to do anything. Just saying that, mate, because I've been in this, nobody's listening to me for this entire time. Those couple people that made all the difference and probably did keep me sane. Once, after 6 or 8 months in the maximum security, they sent me to medium security. I asked if they could just send me to minimum because it was a mistake. I was in maximum, but he said, no, you have to go through the whole cycle. The court wants you to go through the 3-tiered system and not skip one of them. So I go to medium, transported across the country in the Hannibal Lecter cage by myself, handcuffed the whole time. The doctor there says, don't you realize nobody knows what you're talking about? Nobody knows what you've alleged. Nobody knows what ritual abuse is. And I was just like, and you think that's okay? You know, like, I'm here because you say it's not happening and you're telling me nobody even knows what I'm talking about? She told me that, she said, you're going to have to forget about your daughter when you get out of here. And I looked at her and I was like, okay, yeah. Like, good luck with that one. But she doubled my medication, saying that they weren't treating me before. This place was absolutely crazy. There were people jumping over the razor wire fence to get out. I was playing cards one day and a guy choked me out. And then he said, I want you to take me in the bathroom and do that, but hold it and kill me. And I was like, man, I can't kill you. And they would know, but I can't kill you. But that's how bad it was. People wanted to escape. I started thinking of where I would go if I would escape. Okay. I realized I couldn't because it would push me further away from my daughter, but that's how bad it was. And then after some time there, they sent me to minimum security, and I just had to keep saying, I made a mistake. I'm insane. I'm an addict. I'm always going to need medication. Just repeat that stuff over and over again. That's what they want to hear, and they'll let me out. And they did. June 2015, my dad came over to pick me up because they wouldn't release me to myself, which I don't know how that's legal, but we went to the city my daughter lives in and got a lawyer to fight for my parental rights, but they wouldn't evaluate her. They wouldn't reassess any of the facts that were already given. So everything that already happened was true in their book. So I didn't have a chance. My parental rights were stripped. And from that point, I went back to a farm my dad has in Connecticut and just got back in my own space, started researching and praying and fasting. I did a couple 40-day fasts, just crying out to God, show me what to do next. I know I can't do anything. I had stacks of journals from prison. I threw them in the fire because I wanted to eliminate this me thinking that I can do anything at all. I wanted to just burn it up. And those, I wouldn't have sold those for $1 million. But I knew that I wanted God and I needed God's help. And I knew that weird hook that had in my brain of, I can do something with this, and this is a good story. I burned them all in the fire and put writing off to the side for a long time, a couple years. I was still researching. God opened my eyes. For the entire time I was incarcerated, it was my daughter, my daughter, my daughter. God opened my eyes to the bigger picture. And what at that point, it was still my daughter. She's the one that keeps the fire lit under my butt. But it's not only my daughter anymore. It's the fact that this happens at all. It's the fact that children, they are all our children. It's not okay with me, any of it. And at this point, I wouldn't turn away even if my daughter didn't exist. So what I would come to the conclusion is, like, sitting at my desk, having God speak to me, like, just, I need to remember it is that bad. It actually couldn't be any worse than it is. And don't forget, don't be like the man in the mirror who turns and forgets what he just looked at, but just, like, drill this into you. It is that bad. This is war. And as soon as you step away, things try to mesmerize you and take you off that course and convince you that everything's good. And even with my daughter in the situation, that tends to happen to me. Like, I have to constantly remind myself, I have to constantly stay in the truth of this world that we live in, that it all lies under the power of the wicked one. So 2018, my wife, Emily, she, like, I was still wearing my ring from my first wife. I was telling people, I know, as much as I know that I'm a man, I know that I won't remarry. And then this woman walks down the street and just, hi. She disappears, comes back a month or two later. Hi, Emily. Hi, Ian. We go into the barn. I tell her my whole story. And she's like, yeah, okay, what do we do? I bought her a Bible. She was a New Ager who, one of the first things she told me is, there's no devil. And I just laughed at her, bought her a Bible. Didn't preach to her, didn't do much other than wait and pray. And, she didn't have a problem with the fact that I still love my first wife, like, not in the sense of wife, but as a human, as somebody that I have an obligation to. Yes, I will never give up on her. She's not threatened by that. She loves her too. And it just goes so beyond that she restructured my idea of what we're doing here, what love is, what marriage is. And I thank God for that. And I thank Emily for that. And she's just an amazing woman of God now. Like, blows my mind what God can do. I didn't think I would ever be in a church again. And then my stepdad died, and I gave his eulogy at my mom's church, which is the same church I attended as a teenager, but it was now under different leadership. And we joined that church. I was a men's Bible study leader. Emily and I were small group leaders. I was a youth leader until my book came out, and then because of optics, they wouldn't let me be a youth leader anymore. It's like, I'm the one you want with the youth. Like, what's going on? And right now we just moved about 45 minutes away from this church, so we haven't been in a while, but I've been feeling in my heart that that's not the place for us to be. Even though I love those people, they don't get it. They're not my people. And it's not that they're not wrong about everything, but yeah, they just don't get it, and they don't want to get it. Emily and I published our book in May 2024. God gave me a woman who can type 90 words a minute and sharp eye for editing. And yeah, we decided to call it I Love You Like One, based on Romans 12:5. After the book was released, we were attacked hardcore, and we're still attacked. I have no communication with my family. Emily's mom hates me. I got fired from the job I was working at. They sent an email basically saying that I was doing everything that I was accusing them of doing. And it's like, but I'm the one that's been calling for an evaluation for over a decade. Like, I'm not trying to hide. If you could dissect my brain, you could do that. Like I'm not worried about that. But I lost my job. They attacked us in our church as well, which I already had the youth leader taken away. So the church wasn't convinced. It's just kind of confusing when these things are happening. But they knew us and we have a relationship, so I wasn't worried about what they thought about me. But then our pastors read my book, and I'm like, "What? These are men of God, and they're going to help me." They read my book and they didn't care. No real feedback at all. I found out there's Masons in our church. There's one who is an usher, one who is a men's Bible study leader. I talked to them about that. They don't care. They would say about my daughter. They'd say, like, does she know Jesus? I'd just be like, what are you talking about? Like, she knows Jesus better than you do. Like, or about my wife. Like, it's all about, has she accepted Jesus? Like, they just don't get it. So A.W. Tozer wrote, "The great deterrent to victorious Christian living is the idea that once we accept Jesus and believe John 3:16, that's all there is to it. Just go on autopilot and enjoy the ride. This is a source of great disillusionment. And that's the reason I gave up on the church as a child, and I think it's the reason the kids are leaving the established church. They wouldn't leave if we were teaching them the truth." So too many Christians think God wants us to be comfortable and that he wants for us what we think we want for us. I disagree. We are here to be warriors. We are here to be soldiers of Christ. We are pilgrims passing through. It's beautiful because God created it, but there's really nothing for us here. We are to deny ourselves, take up our cross, and follow him, and that is not comfortable. That is hard. That is enduring suffering as a soldier. Oh, so something else from my first wife. That's a post my sister made, and I can't read it from here. I don't know if I have it here, but she says, like, all my life I wanted a BFF, and now I found one. It's Iain's first wife, and I'm just like, man, my family is sad. Like my sister thinks that's my first wife is her BFF, and they didn't have a relationship before the abduction of my daughter. What's going on here? And I found out later that there's Masonry in my family. After I got out of prison, I go home. My dad told me, "Oh, your grandfather was head of the Waterbury Lodge." I'm like, "Oh, really?" And then my mom gave me something. My maternal grandfather was also a Mason. So I'm like, what is going on in my family? I still don't really know, except that they won't talk to us. For years, they haven't talked to us now. My mom was going to give us her property when I published my book. She took me off the will and evicted us with a lawyer. All right. So there's a lot of pictures I had to watch my daughter grow up through Google searches. And that's her with her grandfather in Poland. So almost to the end here. Why do we look to the world for fulfillment? Why do we look for answers anywhere other than in his word and in what we know to be true based on the people in this room all know about SRA and human trafficking? How can we live in a world where that isn't at the forefront? How can we have a war on anything but that? After the Charlie Kirk murder, a Christian friend of mine, or high school friend, he's not my friend, he's the son of the pastor who was the lukewarm guy. That's the reason I left the church. He posted on his Facebook page, "The main question for me is, am I willing to die for what I believe in?" That is the question. I just look at it and I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel sorry for him. For like, don't you crave to be a warrior? Don't you crave to like have purpose in your life? You don't know if you're going to die, if you would be willing to die for what you believe in. Like, I have known since the moment my world shattered, I would die any second for my daughter. I would die any second for any of these survivors. So, in closing, this is war. We know that we are of God and that the whole world lies under the sway of the wicked one. And we know that he has given us the power to trample over the enemy and over all the schemes of the evil one. We need to continue to band together, to believe and to be steadfast. And God will show us the way. He will open the doors. He will do the work. We just have to make the decision that, yes, I'm going to stand. I'm going to say no. And I'm going to dedicate myself and my will to the way. Psalm 145, 18-21. The Lord is near to all who call upon him, to all who call upon him in truth. He will fulfill the desire of those who fear him. He will. I believe he will, or I would be back in prison or dead. The Lord preserves all who love him, but all the wicked he will destroy. My mouth shall speak the praise of the Lord, and all flesh shall bless his holy name forever and ever. Thank you, guys.
Okay, what a story, huh? Brings tear to your eyes, really. It's just so sad. But God, and that's just one story. Like, we have to multiply it. I can tell you that just the last few days we've been here, there's a family I've been working with, a family of 5. They had to go to court yesterday. They were halfway successful because they're trying to escape the state and the family. That's the occult. But they were halfway successful. The judge wouldn't hear their story, and he took one of the children and said she gets to stay with the mother. But we're believing that the Lord is going to deal with that in whatever way is the most important, that for the overall final outcome. We're going to take the victory and we're going to keep fighting for the rest. 2 days prior to that, while we were down here, we had to rescue one of our clients out of a safe house because of the people being ignorant to this. And we tried to teach them, but they weren't open. And so they ended up having somebody in the occult be the head over the house. And they were doing things. So this is nonstop, like all different, slightly different stories. It's big, but our God is bigger. And we can't see the big picture right now, but it reminds me of when I thought he gave me a promise. I thought the Lord gave me a promise, and it didn't come to fruition. And I was hurt. I was like, how could this be? And I was like literally thinking, I'm just going to go. And I'm like, where am I going? Where am I going? I sure am not going to the enemy. And it's like, that's right. You come back to my palm. You come back. You're not looking big enough. You've got to start thinking kingdom. I gave you that promise and it will be fulfilled. But you are looking at just little speck that you're here on this, in this realm, in this earth. I promised you kingdom. And the results, the unfolding of that is that kingdom is unfolding in my family. At his perfect timing, he's bringing them in one after another, and they're becoming some of the mightiest warriors. I laugh at my sister and I start calling her Mini-Me because she's starting to sound like me, and she wasn't there before. And so many more. I could keep going with that. So we have to trust in him. His plan is different. And so with that, I want to read the bag here because, hopefully people are on live stream. Hopefully it's working. And I want you to remember this, the theme of this, the point of this. And it's walking along a beach. A man saw thousands of starfish washed up and dying in the sun. A girl was picking them up one by one, and tossing them into the sea. "Why bother?" he asked. "You won't make much of a difference. There are too many." After tossing another starfish into the water, she said, "I made a difference to that one." If we all make a difference to that one, they will add up and it will multiply. Almost like Amway. It will multiply. We can be Holy Spirit Amway. One person can make a difference. You can make a difference, and he will multiply. All right, so hallelujah.